Hello and welcome to the Total Soccer Show. My name is Daryl Grove and I'm joined by a man who left all his emotions in the quick take hot take. It's Taylor Rockwell. Hello.
Hello, that's right. Neutral the whole way.
You were very, I'm going to say upset when we did our sort of immediate, after the final whistle review of Honduras 1, USA 1.
Yeah, I'm going to be neutral for the rest of this show. That's
Oh,
what I'm saying.
I see.
I have no more emotion. It's all just going to be the neutral planet.
I don't think it is it?
No, definitely not. Still pretty angry.
Yeah, so okay.
So the plan had been that we were going to go play soccer for like an hour and a half, and that would help me
get our
run off
frustrations out.
Then lightning storm, that didn't happen, came back. But beer helps. So that helps with the rage a little bit, and now I'm slightly calmer.
We had one or two just to calm down as we rewatched the game to get us through it. Yeah, I'm a little annoyed we didn't get to play soccer.
Yeah. I mean, it would have helped, like, exercise some of that frustration, but instead we watched it again.
Could have shown the US how it was done.
I mean, yeah. Put on mild pressure and, string together a couple passes. That's pretty much all it takes.
All right, so let's get to it.
Sure.
We've rewatched it now. We've seen this game twice.
It was great. So much fun.
So you didn't have to.
Yeah.
Was it worse on second viewing or was it better?
First off, I wanted to get to, as you said, so you don't have to, and I did kind of forget that this was on BN, which is not an easily accessible channel.
We watched it once, so you didn't have to.
Exactly, and then on top of that, the Go 90 app, it sounds like kind of
crashed. We saw Patrick at practice, which was cancelled, but we still all hung out for 10 minutes before. He said he tried to watch it on Go 90. It crashed after 15 minutes. I feel fine saying that because they're not a sponsor.
That's fair. And I would just then add that so there are probably some people who didn't see the whole game or have only seen highlights. They're probably wondering, was it that bad? And the answer is yes.
I would say it's not as bad as we first thought immediately after the final whistle, but it's still not good.
Disagree. So let's get to it. Yeah, I mean, it's not as bad, but it's still pretty frustrating overall.
Okay, so if you didn't see it, then I guess spoiler alert.
Yeah.
Also, why you listen to this if you haven't seen it, or you don't know the result, but essentially.
Yeah.
It's Honduras 1, United States 1. Honduras scored after, 27 minutes. US were terrible for a good long while, but then found an equaliser through Bobby Wood in the last 5. I think it was 85th minute when he scored. So 1-1. USA ends up dropping a place in the qualification table now. They're in 4th place because Panama won later on. So it's an okay-ish result. It's the bare minimum acceptable result in Honduras, but a really not good performance. And I think we should drill down into why that performance was, one, so frustrating, and two, sort of, we should give the reasons for how it happened that way, because that's really what we want to try and do, right?
It is the sliding scale of CONCACAF qualification as well, that if you said the United States is going to go on road to Honduras and get a point, you okay with that? I would say, well, what did we do in the first game? And if you said, well, you beat Costa Rica at home, maybe I'd be fine with it. But to lose and then get a draw, I'd say, that is the barest of minimums. So, with that said, with the fact that we lost to Costa Rica last week, going into this game, I think we both had an expectation of maybe what the game plan might be, how they would approach this game, and we were both off.
Yeah, we were. Well, we thought Honduras would really sit back in a 5-4-1. They came out in what I would call a 4-2-3-1. There were a lot more attacking pieces out there, and I think that one of the things the US failed to do was handle those attacking pieces.
Yeah, absolutely. And we actually haven't talked about this yet, but I feel like you explaining it that way has helped me stumble on the realization. Have teams figured this out? That maybe don't sit back against the United States and maybe go at them and put them under pressure and be a bit more direct and make them uncomfortable, and maybe you can get a result, because that's exactly what Costa Rica did. We thought away from home, not necessarily needing a win on the road, but kind of wanting a win to secure qualification and put themselves in that very, very strong position, that maybe they'd sit back a bit more. They went at the United States, made them uncomfortable, forced turnovers, got that result. Honduras basically did the exact same thing. As soon as they scored that goal, it was really going at the United States, making them uncomfortable, physical challenges, but stringing passes together, being direct at times. And then they kind of did that throughout. Yeah.
Fast counters.
I'm wondering if that's maybe something that CONCACAF teams will look at and think, maybe we should try to do that too.
We don't have to defend against these guys.
Apparently not.
Does that just mean that our sort of our threat has weakened? We're a reduced force in the world.
Maybe, but I'm more inclined to think that maybe we're just a little predictable in that, they're probably going to have two midfielders, two central midfielders at most, and then they'll have another one who'll probably be central, but he'll be way more attacking, so we'll end up being that sort of empty bucket if we put three in the middle in that 4-2-3-1 or 4-5-1 or whatever you want to say Honduras were doing. We got a man advantage, and then from there it's always the United States having to sort of put out fires, okay, that guy's open, I'll step to him. But now the guy I left is now open, so then somebody else steps, and then slowly everybody's out of position.
This is the big thing we found on the second watch of this game, is so often when Honduras had the ball, which again is the thing that we didn't expect as much, I think. When Honduras had the ball, the US would try to put pressure on the ball, but there was always a man loose. Essentially, we tried to cover all the bases, and there was always one that we didn't have covered, and they pass it to that one. Then we rearrange to try and cover all the bases, and there's a man loose, and they pass it to that guy.
Yeah.
I mean, we'll get into the goal, the first goal, the Honduras goal later, but that's pretty much exactly what happens on that goal, right? There's always a man spare, and they pass to that man, he turns and passes, and then Kyoto's in on goal.
Yeah, it felt a little bit like how you teach like the initial pressing approach, that it's like, okay, if there's a guy open, you get to him. It doesn't matter, you step to him, and then somebody else will step to that guy. And so the United States had this approach of like, all right, whoever's open, just somebody run at him and make sure he doesn't have time.
Yep.
But then it was sort of like, but instead of like sprinting at him, maybe get there like 70% pace.
Yeah.
And then also there was no sort of secondary like follow up of like, but you got to stay.
There's always a man spare.
But it's also like, but part of the reason is because you have that initial approach of like everybody just mark somebody, everybody step to somebody, which is fine when you're starting to teach the press. But then the next logical progression is no, but you stay in your zones. You've got your squares and your areas of influence, and you're not supposed to like leave here, or you don't go into this area. And so it teaches you kind of how to patrol space. Whereas the United States, I felt like it was Daryl was going to go mark that guy, but now I'm going to go mark Daryl's guy, but now somebody hasn't marked my guy, so then there's always a mismatch, and it just felt like there wasn't that second level of follow-up that the United States was really needing.
But here's the big question. Why was there always a man open?
Well, again, I'm still like a little more emotional than you are, so I feel like I might come up with like 46,000 different reasons why that was the case. It seems like maybe you've got a more simplistic explanation. So let's go with that. Let's go with the obvious direct one.
We'll go with the reductive reason, because there probably are 46,000 reasons, or there or thereabouts. But to me, the one main thing that I saw, especially on the rewatch, was Lopez, number 10. I've forgotten his first name. Alexander Lopez, number 10. He has the assist for the Kyoto goal. One of the things he kept doing was the proper floating number 10 thing, where sometimes he would go and join their central striker, Lozano.
Okay, yeah.
And then they'd be matched up. Like Gonzalez would have one of them, Beasler would have one of them. Then our centre-backs are like, great, we've got a man each. This is perfect. This is what we expected.
Yeah.
But then Lopez would drift back into midfield, right? So, and then Gonzalez and Beasler would not go with him because they're scared to step out.
Yeah.
And then they're outnumbered because Bradley and Acosta, our two central midfielders, are already dealing with, he says slowly as he tries to remember the names,
Claros and Mejia.
That's what I was going to say.
Yep.
Yeah, they're already dealing with Claros and Mejia. So they're already like set up with those two, right? So then there's just this extra number 10 doing the very smart thing of going and sort of overloading and having the numerical advantage.
Yeah, and I felt like what was so frustrating about that is you're absolutely correct that was a big problem. And rather than the United States sort of figure that out and have like one of the center backs step, or maybe Clint Dempsey drops in further, it just became sort of like, all right, Kellen Acosta and Michael Bradley are in a 3v2 situation, so they're going to kind of go zone here. And so instead it was like then they kind of spaced out and tried to mark like passing lanes, and what they did was just leave three guys open in the middle.
And that also makes you, what you just said, what Bradley and Acosta do, that makes you less aggressive.
Yeah,
because if you're trying to mark zone like that in a weird way, it's the opposite of on corners, right? When you're trying to mark zone like that, you're just trying to cover space, and you're scared to go charge and close a guy down and win the ball high, which is something the US never did.
This is a really weird analogy, but bear with me.
Oh,
it's like the like the person running from Jason in like the Friday the 13th movies, where it's like if you're not sure where he is, your head's on a swivel, you're like falling over. You're not really making that like just the beeline to the car, start the car, drive away. You're like, he could be there. I don't know. I'm stumbling for no apparent reason. It's like you're never really that sharp and locked in. Your head's always on a swivel because somebody might be there.
So the US trying to pressure the ball are sort of like the victims in horror movies, sort of running blindly around.
Yes,
I think really good.
I think if you want. Well, I'm not going to extend that analogy any further. I'm going to end it there because that'd be reaching. But I think to your point, though, that like that was a problem, and I think the way that you solve that, as I said, like you could have like one person step or one person drop, but I think the more obvious approach is you have the entire back line step up.
Yes,
and that's what kept not happening.
What I would do. If I'm a centre-back, or if I'm coaching a centre-back, I would ask them, for the most part, to go with him.
Yeah.
Just close him down and go with him. Don't let him overload us in midfield, right? Then you don't risk leaving yourself outnumbered at the back. It's just matched up, 1-to-1. But if Omar Gonzalez, for example, follows Lopez into midfield, not all the way, you don't have to go wandering miles and miles, but if you go like 10 yards out, go with him, then he's not open to receive a pass.
No,
right?
Yeah, absolutely. But and then on top of that, it's that like if Honduras have the ball maybe 15 yards from midfield, so they're in their half, the United States routinely was like maybe 20, 30 yards away from midfield. So suddenly it's like 50 yards between where Honduras are and where the U.S. backline is. That's so much space, especially if you only have those two central midfielders. And so if you move that backline up, number one, you push that offside line up, so suddenly you don't have very pacey people hanging right on you, but being like, okay, fine, if you want to give us this much room, that's awesome.
I'll say this, I think the US was scared of the pace of Elias on the right and Kyoto on the left.
Yep.
Even with hanging deep, they still burned our fullbacks regularly. So it's not as if we solved that problem by not stepping up.
No, but I think what you could have done is step up, and yes, you run the risk of maybe them catching you offside, and that's where you need a vocal center back to organize and keep that line like straight and not ragged.
You mean breaking out offside trap?
Yeah, exactly. Sorry, but then I think also if you push your all four of your defenders forward, now they can step to players that they weren't otherwise stepping to. That moves the midfield up, and suddenly Honduras doesn't have the time to pick out those passes. Yep. They don't have those wide open spaces. There was one moment in the first half when Honduras, yes, the field was bad, but they strung together like a 14 pass move that went from right to left, back to right, to the central. They drew a free kick, and it was all just kind of like very quick one and two touch, three touch passing when the United States was just totally stretched. And I think if you have a higher back line pushed up, a tighter space in which Honduras are trying to play through, it's going to cause problems.
Okay, well, now feels like a good time to talk about Honduras' goal.
Sure.
The first Honduran goal. Because we haven't set this up deliberately, but I feel like everything we were talking about, which are things we saw throughout the game, all happened on this goal.
Yeah.
Let me talk you. Tell me if I'm wrong on any of this, right? The move starts for Honduras. They're playing it out of the back.
Yeah.
Dempsey and Pulisic are trying to apply pressure, right? They don't quite get the right angles. It's not terrible, but they don't get the right angles.
It's not terrible if the midfield is stepping behind them.
Exactly, yeah. So Honduras are able to play it between, I can't remember who the centre-back is. It's maybe one of the Figueroas, he said, and he's then at least 50% right across the back four, right? They play it between Dempsey and Pulisic into midfield. It's probably to Mejia, I believe. There's no pressure on him because Bradley and Acosta are deep with other people because the defenders are even deeper behind them. There's just not enough pressure.
Right.
So Mejia's then able to receive the ball, turn around, look up, play a really easy pass into the feet of Lopez, number 10. And Lopez, number 10, has just been next to Beasler and Gonzalez.
Yep.
He's run away from them. Gonzalez has watched him run away, and he hasn't said anything to anyone, and he's just let him hang loose in midfield.
And this is the part that I'm talking about, where it's like if you have a vocal leader as one of your center backs. So say that's, all right, for sake of argument, that's Daryl Grove is the center back now, marking Lopez. When that
the very poor man's John Terry.
Yes. I don't think so.
But nicer off the field.
I'd rather hang around with you than John Terry. But if that attacker drops into midfield and you look around and you realize, like, wait a minute, they still have the ball near midfield. They're about 20 yards away, 30 yards away. We can step 10 yards. We can step 5 yards, whatever. You can bring your line forward. Now you can go track that player, but you can bring the line with you. So everybody steps up. Now those guys who are standing kind of stretched the defense are now offside or have to move with you. So they're no longer on the front foot. They're reacting to you as the defender, but you're also stepping to that player so he doesn't have time to turn and wait and wait. And then play that through ball.
Because what Lopez is able to do, because Omar Gonzalez, doesn't go with him, doesn't tell anyone else to mark him, so just leaves him loose in midfield. He's their playmaker. He literally has the numbers 1 and 0 on his back.
Why would you
number
communicate 10 to your midfielders that there's a wide open playmaker? Why would you do that? No, it's stupid.
So Lopez receives the ball after Mejia has turned and passed it to him. Lopez receives the ball, turns, passes, looks up, sees Kyoto on the run, running the outside of Graham Zusi, making that sort of bent run in behind. Plays a really nice ball, I think, between Zusi and Gonzalez for Kyoto to run onto, and then this is where the US are suddenly in deep, deep trouble.
He certainly plays a ball. I'm not going to say it. Because I think we watched this as we are wont to do, like about 50 times.
Too many.
To the point where
I was hating it.
To the point where we went from being amused by the Honduran fan who jumped the fence and tried to take a selfie to just sort of like, all right, we get it. Let's move on.
Yeah.
But
Kyoto wasn't into it, was he?
He was not. He was focused. He was focused. So we weren't pleased with the lack of step, lack of pressure from the US. We were not pleased with Graham Zusi getting beat. Again, he got burnt 5 times in the first 31 minutes.
Yeah.
Not great. But
they definitely put a target on his spot.
Yeah. And then we were especially not pleased with what Omar Gonzalez did in this sequence. And it's been focused on a little bit in the halftime analysis and afterwards, but I feel like we've even spotted a few things that maybe people might have missed.
So what else did we see?
So first of all, I think Omar completely misreads this from start to finish. So that ball comes through, and I think he thinks he's in a position to be able to either like cut the ball out and intercept it and turn and go the other way, or maybe at worst do like a quick back pass to Brad Guzan and play it long. So I think he's setting up to do that. maybe he's a little bit thrown by the pressure, but I think he's also then just misreads it. Maybe it's the ball, maybe it's the field, whatever. But then I think he very quickly realizes, oh, shoot, I'm not going to be able to intercept this ball. I'm not going to be able to get a clean pass onto it. So then he tries to go for the tackle.
So he said, let's instead make the worst slide tackle in the history of the United States.
And we couldn't really figure out why, and that's why we watched this so slowly. And I think the reason why in the end is because he makes, quote-unquote, makes the tackle with his right foot. So he's got like the right foot extended, but he jumps from his right foot.
He launches from the right and tackles with the right.
So that left foot, from the time he like kind of jumps to do the tackle, never touches the ground.
It's just
so
decoration.
It's this weird like Liu Kang in Mortal Kombat, like bicycle kick to get his foot on the ball, which means...
But which he doesn't. He does not connect with the ball.
He gets megged.
That's the worst part of this. I mean, for one, this could have been a penalty kick, right? If Kyoto had like felt the contact and gone down, I think there's a really good shout for a penalty kick, probably a red card on Omar Gonzalez for denying a goal-scoring opportunity.
But instead, Kyoto gets a touch to the ball. I don't think he means to do this. I think he's just trying to get around Omar Gonzalez. He's probably trying to get in a position where, if he cuts across Gonzalez, there's contact. It's a penalty, maybe a red card.
Yeah. Oh, is that still the rule, by the way?
I don't know. That's
it might
a good
be just
question.
a penalty these days,
Either way, still a penalty. But instead, what he does is with that touch, he puts it underneath Gonzalez's leg. So Gonzalez doesn't... I always assumed that he tackled the ball into Kyoto, then it spilled free.
Loose.
No, he just gets beat.
So it's not even... It's even worse than it looks on first view, isn't it?
Because now instead of doing like a slide tackle, which would be the like sliding in, it's this weird like jump kind of heel tackle because he's trying to hook the ball so that it doesn't go like loose. He's basically trying to put it off of Kyoto. Then Gonzalez can keep possession.
It ends up being the most elaborate... way to get nutmegged I've ever seen.
Pretty much. And the only other thing that's worth noting here maybe is that, and I don't necessarily think this is his fault, but Guzan comes off his line and then backpedals and then tries to come, and he gets his feet set and everything, but you do wonder if maybe if he doesn't backpedal at all, if he just keeps coming, if he makes that a harder situation for Kyoto.
What I thought is maybe he thought that the Gonzalez tackle would bounce off of Kyoto and therefore Guzan would be off his line fast to collect sort of a 50-50 or loose ball. And then it's a good decision, right? Because then he's read that play kind of correctly, because I think that's what you expect to happen. And then he snuffs out that danger. And as soon as it seems that Kyoto's just got there first, poked it underneath Gonzalez, then Guzan thinks, I've got to backpedal. And then so it's not fully Guzan's fault, but I think backpedaling is the key to this whole goal. Right? Because I think the reason Gonzalez is so... indecisive when that through ball comes through. Because again, he could have just stepped into that ball and taken it, right, pretty comfortably. But it's because he starts backpedaling from the beginning of the play. The minute he doesn't go with Lopez, he starts going backwards, and then he just keeps going backwards for the rest of the play. Yeah,
absolutely. And that's why I'm going to say...
And that's a mindset. Right?
And that's why I think I've done the numbers here. I'm going to say this is 1% Brad Guzan's fault. I'm going to say 10% Gravazzusi's fault because he gets beat. 24% Omar Gonzalez, which leaves 65% overall approach. Because really...
there's got to be some for Kyoto there, right?
I mean, that's just credit. He gets positive. But, like, Matt Doyle talked about it in his column that, like, Omar Gonzalez is good for one bad mistake a game. Like, and I'm not saying that lets him off the hook by any means, but it's still an individual, like, 1v1 situation under pressure, but it's born of, like, the United States tactically being bettered. And it's the second time that's happened in as many games.
Oy, yes. All right, so we've talked about the US's defensive problems at length, right? Let's maybe talk about their attacking problems. Why were the US unable to put together any consistent attacks against this Honduran team?
Sure. I would say it's because they were trying...
Wrong, the answer's long grass.
Obviously, that's it. A hostile atmosphere, heat, long grass.
We should address long grass at some point. Maybe we'll get to it in a second, because it's maybe not the first thing we should talk about.
Sure. I would say it's because they were trying... Upon second viewing, we didn't really know what the plan was. It seems like the plan was to be more direct. That maybe they'd play through the middle, have some possession, but I think it probably was, hey, look, this field isn't very great. We're probably not going to be able to string together too many passes. Honduras are going to be physical, so that might lead to fouls. So let's try to be direct and beat them. And so that felt like it was a ball over the top, or it felt like it was diagonal balls out wide to Darlington Nagbe or Christian Pulisic, and then it was Christian Pulisic go at him and do stuff.
I feel like a really good summary of this game happens in the first 10 seconds.
Sure.
United States wins coin toss, or at least takes kickoff, right? The ball goes back to Michael Bradley. Bradley looks up, sees Christian Pulisic running down that right wing, tries to hit him, overhits it, out of bounds.
Straight out of bounds.
That feels like a sort of really like the perfect example of the US's forward play in this game.
Yeah, I think so, because it was always like, you see what they're trying to do, but they're not quite pulling it off, and there's a number of reasons why that's the case.
Oh, do you want to list them?
I mean, yeah, I think for starters,
I feel like I keep throwing it to you because I'm not fully sure what they are, to be honest.
I mean, that's kind of the way this game went. Is that there's no real clear narrative. I would say it was basically that Honduras set themselves up to win and executed their game plan perfectly. And I would say still don't
semi-perfectly. Finished 1-1.
I mean, true. I would also argue that this isn't really their game plan, but this easily could have been 3-0 for Honduras. In those final few minutes when the United States is really going for it, Honduras have, two very clear-cut chances that they essentially shoot themselves in the foot. One time, it's a 4v2 breakaway that they basically fail to pass in time, and Omar Gonzalez essentially is kind of standing there and they dribble into
We can
him.
hit on this later, but I think right at the 75th minute, Bruce Arena does go 3 at the back, essentially 3-4-3, 3-4-2-1, and really opens things up. And Honduras have 2 or 3 chances to score on the counter. It could have been 2-3-0. But I think, how did we get to that place?
Sure.
Why didn't the original 4-2-3-1 that the US went out there with? Really, I want to say more like 4-4-2, the way Dempsey stayed forward. Why didn't that work out? Because
Honduras were still relatively deep at times. And so Jordan Morris, we kept seeing him kind of like make that 15-yard check too and then try to run in behind. But Honduras didn't really go with him. And so it's sort of like kind of knowing that he was then going to try to make that run. It's almost like, all right, you can run 20 yards away. I know you're going to come right back to where I am. So then that kind of negates that. And on top of that, when that ball, if it were to be played, he is now maybe 25 yards from goal. So if you're playing a ball over the top, decent chance the keeper is going to come collect that.
Yeah.
He's also not really a target guy. So you can't ping it long and expect him to hold it up and settle it, and then you can play off of him. So you end up playing wide. And I think sometimes that worked with Darlington Nagbe. There were sequences when he would get a few like it
was a great Darlington Nagbe, Kellen Acosta moment, and it really happened like a quick transition where Acosta really turned quick, banged it out wide to Nagbe, then ran. Nagbe dribbled down the left and then cut it back to Acosta. I believe Acosta crosses to the far post for either Dempsey or Morris, and they just get a Honduran defender there. But that could have been the perfect move. And I want to say that's kind of one of the things the US was trying to do. Get it out wide fast or get it over the top fast.
I think so. But I think the other thing they were trying to do was play into the feet of Christian Pulisic and let him do stuff. And I think Honduras were very aware of that. And so they put pressure on Michael Bradley so that he didn't really have time to pick out the passes he wanted.
Yeah.
And then on top of that, I mean, they were happy to foul Christian Pulisic. He got knocked down a lot in the first 15 minutes or so. But then it was also just they were willing to stand him up and have numbers come over and help. And I felt like a lot of times he was in either a situation that ended in him getting fouled or in him dribbling into 3 players because they kind of swarmed him in defense.
Do you feel... So the quick take, hot take, I think we were really harsh on Christian Pulisic, or at least very unimpressed with Christian Pulisic. Do you feel any different on the rewatch?
I mean, only in the sense that I feel like it was more so he wasn't given good instructions. He wasn't given a good idea of what was expected and what he needed to do. So we would see him out on the right, then kind of up top by himself, but then in the middle, and then sometimes on the left, and sometimes in defense, but then oftentimes not in defense. And if you've got Graham Zusi, who we know is going to struggle in 1v1 situations, obviously Honduras did. They were trying to isolate him.
Yeah.
And you've got Christian Pulisic, who I don't think was given much, he wasn't very much tasked with getting back and helping defend. It's not really a good situation for him in any situation.
I think that's a bad choice from Bruce Arena to have Graham Zusi up against Kyoto, who Arena must know about because he plays for Houston and he's seen him many times, right? Or if not, he could have watched the video. We know about him, right?
Also already played against him.
Yeah. And then to have ahead of him Christian Pulisic being given kind of free rein and not told to worry about tracking back too much. If anything, if you're going to go with Zusi up against Kyoto, who's obviously a fast attacking threat from the left, you should have just had extra protection in front of Graham Zusi.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, 100%. I think that's...
double glazing.
That's where I think you move... I mean, I think in retrospect, hindsight being 2020, you put Christian Pulisic...
We just had one of those things that just doesn't let insects through, but lets lots of wind through.
Is that a thing? You mean a screen door?
Yeah, screen door. We should have had double glazing.
You are not from
These
the
are
South.
excellent metaphors. These are very English metaphors.
That's terrible. A screen door is not an English metaphor, sir. Anyway, I think, in hindsight 2020, I think you put Christian Pulisic central. You put in Bedoya, maybe Paul Arriola, who are going to work back, be physical.
Do you remember the Gold Cup? We talked so much about how Arriola was sort of covering the sins of Graham Zusi.
They're going to fight, and they're going to work back, and they're going to help, and that's what Graham Zusi needed. He needed somebody to sort of back him up so he could just try to stand up Kyoto.
He needed to be DeAndre Yedlin.
Yeah, but in 1v1 situations, what he was routinely doing is like, okay, he's faster than me. I'm just going to try to slow him down. And so it would be like, in the situations where Zusi would still keep position, he would be 5 yards off of him. He would just be like, fine, cross the ball. I don't care. Just please don't beat me
There
anymore.
were a couple of those, right, where he just looked determined not to get roasted, but was perfectly fine with Kyoto crossing the ball.
And if you've
Actually, Ellis is the one I'm really thinking of who did this to him.
But if you've got a hard-working right midfielder who's going to track back, if you're Zusi and you finally force Kyoto or Ellis or whomever to cut back, that's where that right midfielder's coming in, and now you've got a double team, or now he can kind of intercept that cut back, play it, and you're away. Christian Pulisic, not necessarily because he was like being lazy or anything, don't get me wrong, but he wasn't always doing that track back, or if he was, it was sort of like after the ball had been played, he'd come in slowly, but he wasn't really working back to do that defensive job because that's not really his specialty. But I think that definitely hurts you in terms of your defensive responsibilities, but also in your ability to then transition into attack.
All right, quickly back to the attacking piece of this, though, because we didn't manage to string together many passes or many coherent attacks. I'm a little worried about how we would give the ball to Pulisic and sort of watch him dribble.
Yep.
And then sometimes also he would be successful dribbling, but then he would not be so successful in releasing the ball. There's a specific play with Clint Dempsey I'm thinking about.
Yeah, it's the one where basically he does really well. He like rides a physical challenge, keeps the ball in bounds, gets away from the defender, dribbles at the Honduran defense. Jordan Morris makes a run from left to right. Clint Dempsey kind of holds central and is really open, like wide open.
For a long time, right?
For a good 10 or 15 yards, which is a lot of time if you've got like as many touches as Pulisic has on the ball. You can play him in. Dempsey could then try to do a shot. He could try to take somebody on. He could flick it in over the top for Jordan Morris to run onto.
He could give you back.
It could be a combination. And instead, Pulisic held it. And then when he finally did play it, he played a bad pass. He played it behind Clint Dempsey. He played into the feet of a Honduran player.
Yeah.
And it did feel like kind of consistently Christian Pulisic's like passing was maybe 2 touches later than it would be for Dortmund. It was he just kind of kept delaying for a second or a half a second, and that was enough for Honduras to get into shape.
So this is where I think the field comes into play. Okay. I really think the field slowed things down. I saw Darlington Nagbe get on the ball a couple of times and like think about accelerating or think about playing a fast pass, and then it would just take a couple extra touches to settle that ball, because that long grass was weird looking. You saw that ball kind of sit and float on that grass more times than...
But see, I wouldn't say it was to settle. I would say that the ball doesn't move as much, and so it kind of sticks there. And so that's what I kept seeing.
Like you try to move forward with the ball and it doesn't quite come with you. It's that weird. I mean, I've played on weird grass like that, and I know that feeling of how that's really unnerving.
Yeah. And I disagree.
You disagree?
I do. I don't care. I really don't.
Okay.
Honduras can move the ball. As I said, they had sequences where they moved the ball on the ground. And then, sometimes they were direct. And I think that was them sort of knowing what the field was going to be. The United States was well aware. Like,
Bruce Arena talked about this yesterday in a press conference.
Yeah, and on top of that, like, it's going to be hot. So you game plan. You set yourself up to deal with those issues. And I just, like...
By stretching yourself out really far so everybody has to run around in the middle.
Yeah, I mean, I just think of, like
that was sarcastic,
medieval warfare or something. I was on to my next analogy, but I was like, I think of medieval warfare. If you like showed up with your army and you didn't have archers, and I did, and you're like, well, that's not fair. Like this is an unfair situation, because it's just like, no, you know what to expect. You know that you need to set yourself up to deal with the threat.
Did we not sort of like know that there was the long grass and think we'll just bang it out wide to our fast wingers and we'll bang it over the top to Jordan Morris, and maybe the ball will hold up in the grass? Like maybe there was a plan for this, but it just turned out to not actually work.
Is that a plan? Is that really a plan to just like bang it out wide and kick it long? That doesn't seem like a plan to me. And then on top of that, to not have players in the positions to be able to do that effectively. I just don't see that. And so, yes, I know it was an intentionally bad field to slow things down and make it easier for Honduras. And the temperature as well, playing it at a time when it's going to be as hot as possible, when it's a national holiday, so everybody's there. Yeah, I mean, I think you can point to all of that as being obstacles for the United States, but I just still think you know what to expect. And I found it really frustrating that at the end of the game, Bruce Arena's first comment was like, welcome to CONCACAF. And it's like, you've been here for 3 campaigns, man. You know how to deal with this stuff.
He may have been talking about Honduras, actually. I think he said Honduras are going to be disappointed with not winning that, but welcome to CONCACAF.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I don't care. It's still welcome to CONCACAF, and I find that frustrating.
All right, well, the US did turn this game around, kind of, in that they scored an equalising goal.
Sure.
We'll maybe talk about how and why that happened after we take an ad break.
Sure.
Today's sponsor is RX Bar. RX Bar is whole food protein bars with simple, real ingredients.
What does that mean? It means that their bars are made with 100% whole ingredients, and that's why they label them as such. On the front of the packaging, you're going to get the core ingredients, egg whites, dates, nuts. That's like how many you'll get in each different bar. Then on the back, you're going to get the ingredients that make up texture and taste. So like 100% real cacao, coconut, etc., berries, all that good stuff.
So they sent us a box very kindly.
They sure did.
What was your favorite in the box?
It would be the coconut chocolate, I think.
Interesting.
Yes, they were all very good. I tend to be... My wife is a chocolate person. I am a fruit person. She enjoyed all of them. I enjoyed the chocolate more than I think I enjoyed the fruit, which is rare for me, I have to say.
I go chocolate sea salt.
Okay.
Because here's the thing I do like about RX bars
Big
is...
old chunks of sea salt in there.
Because there's only so many ingredients, and they're listed. You do taste each ingredient a little more. And I really love the combo of sea salt and chocolate. You know, salt opens up your taste buds. Chocolate goes in there and makes you feel good.
I'm not sure that's how taste buds work, but sure. And I think to your
Science,
point...
Taylor. It's science.
To your point, you don't have a whole lot of additives. In fact, you have no artificial colors, artificial flavors, preservatives, or fillers. They're also gluten-free, soy-free, dairy-free. So you're basically getting like good protein from those egg whites. You're getting it all bound together with the dates, and you're getting nuts for texture.
And we did one RX bar ad, I think maybe a month ago, and we got some good feedback from listeners. We got an email from, I don't want to use his full name because he didn't really give us permission to share this, but we got an email from Fred saying he heard about RX bar on the ad, all in on it, and he started buying them regularly. Thank you, Fred, for that email.
And when we get new sponsors on the show, we tend to get like some stuff to try out to see, just so we have some familiarity with the product. This far and away was my wife's I think this is her favorite thing that's ever happened from doing the Total Soccer Show. She was very, very thrilled with RX bars.
I will say as well, if we don't like the product, we don't advertise it.
This is true.
We throw it out the window.
We've done that a couple times. It was awkward.
We don't actually throw it out the window. We're on the 9th floor.
That's true. That'd be problematic. Best of all, I believe Total Soccer Show listeners can get a special offer.
25% off your first order of RX bars. If you go to rxbar.com/soccer, rxbar.com/soccer, and you got to do both these things, use the promo code soccer at checkout. They want to make double sure that you heard this show.
They do. And if you're curious, the link will be in the show notes.
Yes, it will.
As ever.
Yeah, you'll be putting it in there, right?
I sure will.
rxbar.com/soccer, and the code is soccer for 25%.
Ideally sometime before 4 in the morning, I'll be putting it in there. We'll see how long we go.
Well, thanks to our game being cancelled, or lightninged off, I believe is the phrase. We're a little ahead of schedule tonight.
Yeah, a little bit, yeah.
All right, so when we last left our intrepid heroes down in Honduras, they were losing 1-0, and it was not looking good, and there were no good attacking ideas for all kinds of different reasons. I'm going to make the argument Bruce Arena made some changes, and those changes paid off because it finished 1-1.
All right, make the argument.
Bruce Arena made those changes. He brought on Bobby Wood. Bobby Wood scored the equaliser.
Do you really believe this, or are you just arguing this because you feel like you need to say something positive?
So it's not that, no, it's that I want to at least float the idea so that we're not all negative.
Okay.
Because, so the US is stuck in this 4-2-3-1, but really it ends up being a 4-4-2 empty bucket type scenario where nothing's really working, right? So he does switch it up. We go 3 at the back
in
with
the 75th
Jeff
minute.
Cameron, Omar Gonzalez, Matt Beasler. We go 4 across midfield eventually with Jordan Morris is like our left mid / left wing back. Paul Arriola, who I think should have started, was I think really lively on that right wing. 2 central midfielders are Bradley and Acosta again. And then you got a front 3 of Bobby Wood, Clint Dempsey, Christian Pulisic. And we kind of just go for it. And we nearly concede 2 or 3 more goals. But I think that's all part of the idea of rolling the dice. We're kind of desperate for a goal here. Let's throw everything out there. We'll open ourselves up at the back, but we'll get everybody forward and maybe something happens. What happens is Bobby Wood comes on and scores an equaliser.
Sure.
That's the case for Bruce Arena's substitutions.
Sure. And my counter to that would be that Jeff Cameron is certainly a substitution.
Yeah.
I would say that, yes, he had a bad game on Friday. I think this game was evidence that he needs to start.
Yeah, I'm very surprised he didn't start. I understand that Bruce Arena values sort of possession and the opposite of values giving away possession. He doesn't like it. Omar Gonzalez's performance says Jeff Cameron should start at right centre-back.
Especially because when he comes on, the way this goal happens, it comes from a free kick earned by Christian Pulisic, who's fouled. But it comes from Jeff Cameron kind of slowing the ball up, holding and holding and holding, waiting until he finds the pass he wants and playing that ball in. So it's him kind of starting it with possession.
Before that, he'd hit a really good ball out right to Paul Arriola. Sorry, who I confused with Christian Pulisic a few times.
Yeah.
If you'd asked me which of those players played for Dortmund, I think I'd have said Paul Arriola.
Risky. But so I would still say, though, that I stand with what I said in the Quick Take Hot Take, which is that it's still, even with all those changes, as I said, Honduras had better chances. They had the better chances in those final 15 minutes. And the United States were lucky. It was not that they earned it. It was not that they put Honduras under pressure consistently and earned that equalizer. It was scrappy work from Matt Besler, who I think, I said at the time nobody had a good game. I would say Matt Besler probably had the best game, and I think was the one whose stock improved the most from these couple games.
I'd say Areola in his short spell had a good
that's probably
game.
True.
Yeah.
But he does really well to keep that ball alive off the rocket from Acosta that saves. Then Jordan Morris does excellent. It's a great flick. It's a great chest settle by Bobby Wood, turns and puts it in the back of the net. That's all great, but it wasn't through some sustained build-up. It wasn't 10 minutes of crazy pressure where we were both really excited. It was kind of a fluke.
Yes.
Which is the most common fish in the sea, or one of the most common fish in the sea, so you never know.
That's ironic.
Kevin Malone from The Office taught me that.
But I will say this, at least we mixed it up and sort of rolled the dice and took a gamble on trying to get an equaliser. I have watched games where the coaches basically just stuck with the same formation and thought, well, we'll probably pull it off. Yeah. You know what I mean? So at least going 3 at the back and opening it up and seeing if something happened produced positive results. Yeah. He who dares. Fortune favours the brave. I can keep throwing idioms at you.
Yes, in the final 15 minutes when it was obvious it wasn't working for the entire first half. Yeah. I mean, I guess, and that's where I go, is that like...
Yeah, I guess solutions don't absolve the problems you caused to begin with.
No, but I'm also saying that he didn't solve the problems until the 75th minute, and his solution was, let's put on a bunch of people and see what happens. Like Graham Zusi was beaten 5 times in 31 minutes. Honduras were isolating him. Fix that. Deal with that. There's also
an argument that we don't know that Graham Zusi was definitely coming off. So we didn't realize this at the time when we rewatched. Graham Zusi gets an elbow in the head from, I'm not sure who it was, probably the Honduran left back, probably Alvaro.
I believe so. Alvarado, I think.
And then he's subbed off a couple minutes later. So he's probably subbed off because he took a blow to the head, which is the correct move, health and safety-wise, 100%. Taylor Twellman's right about that issue. Yep. But it also means that maybe if he hadn't got that blow to the head, he might have stayed on the whole game.
Yeah, or it might have been something like maybe it was Omar Gonzalez coming off, Jeff Cameron coming on, and then you're dealing with it that way. I mean, I'm not really sure what the situation was, but Jeff Cameron was definitely coming on, and then it seems like maybe they had to adjust because of what happened to Graham Zusi.
It's possible, yeah.
But so I just still feel like I get really frustrated when managers come out after halftime when things have clearly not been working and there's not really a noticeable difference. And we really watched. We went back and watched twice the first 5 or 10 minutes of the second half to see, are the United States doing anything differently? And really the answer was no. They're just being more direct and kicking it even longer, which is why when we had that one tweet, I forget who shared it with us. We've retweeted it, but it was basically, there was like a 30-second period where I think 8 players touched the ball.
Yep, they just headed it back and forth.
And it touched the ground twice.
It's like there was a tennis net across the halfway line, and it's just US players heading it to Honduran players who head it back over, and back and forth and back and forth. I think it ends with Omar Gonzalez hits like a half volley all the way through to the Honduran keeper. Yeah, it's a horrible bit of football, especially for an international World Cup qualifier.
Yeah. And so I think at the end of the day, the United States is still in a position to qualify. They're 4th in the table, so they have the playoff, but it seems like they've got the better run in. They've got Panama at home, Trinidad away. Honduras have, Mexico and Costa Rica. Panama have the United States and then Costa Rica. So they've got a tough situation. So that's all good, and I think maybe you could then say, like, yeah, it's a tough game, tough atmosphere, really hot. The United States were able to get a point and keep their hopes alive. I think it's just still... As I said in the hot take, I thought we were beyond that. And so for it to be sort of like, well, we got a point and we're kind of alive. So that's good. Or we are alive.
The other thing is, before we took World Cup qualifying, at what point do we stop being proud of ourselves for just like battling away to a point or a narrow loss when we go away to a place like Honduras, where, there's the being kept up at night in the hotel, there's the somewhat humidity, there's the afternoon kickoff, there's the long grass. Like, I almost want to say that we should set a higher... Am I asking too much? It's like set a higher bar and just be like, yep, those are all problems. We're going to go down there and we're going to win.
I mean, I think
we're not there yet, are we?
No,
we always are ready to make the excuse that, like, it was tough. It was tough.
Yeah. The players just had that. It was a rough day, and they didn't quite find the chemistry, and it was really hot, and the grass was tall.
But I'm really torn between saying that.
Somebody stubbed their toe. Somebody had a hangnail.
That was the referee stubbed his toe.
Well, we'll talk about that in a moment.
I'm really torn between saying that we should just be better and do better, and then saying, well, those guys faced all those conditions and came back with a point, and I kind of want to pat them on the back for it.
I mean, I would say this, like, and this
I'm genuinely confused. I don't know which way to swing on this.
I would say that it's grain of salt here because, like, Brazil have already qualified like easily.
Can I have some chocolate after?
Sure, but like. It's like Brazil go to Bolivia and win every single time. Like Bolivia's a difficult atmosphere. It's really high up.
Who just lost there? Was it Chile?
Yes, I think it was.
Someone had a tough away game at altitude.
Yeah.
El Paz, I want to say.
Sure.
That's not quite
La Paz? Right. I'm not sure. It's one or the other. Anyway.
Bolivia.
Yeah. And so, like, you're always going to have those really difficult situations when you're doing World Cup qualifying. If you're in Europe, if you're in South America, Africa, Asia, the United States, CONCACAF, excuse me, not the United States. If you are the United States, you're going to have that. And I think the difference for me is if you have a kind of coherent game plan and you set yourself up to be in the best position to get the result. Hey, look, we lost to Costa Rica. We're going to Honduras. We need to get the result, but we learn from the mistakes. We can't do like empty bucket. We can't have a situation where our midfield gets overrun. We got to try to build consistent attacks, get some level of chemistry going early.
Paul Arriola, you're starting.
Yeah, and that's where like you want to see that progression. That's all we've really ever talked about with the United States is we want logical progression from one game to the next that sets us up to be in the best possible position if we qualify.
Yeah.
I don't think we saw that in either one of these two games.
So this is an extra conversation there. We can talk about whether the US will qualify. Do you want to talk about the table briefly?
I mean, they're going to qualify.
Are they?
Yeah.
All right, so right now we're in fourth spot because Panama won, right?
Yep.
Fourth spot is the playoff spot. We could end up playing Australia or Syria in the Intercontinental Confederation playoff, which sounds like a wrestling belt, but is actually a World Cup qualification game.
Yep.
Or if we beat Panama, get a result against away to Trinidad, those are our final two games in October, then we finish third because we'll jump over Panama with a win and we qualify straight, right? But that doesn't mean that everything's solved because what we've seen in the last two games are all kinds of problems with the US national team less than a year out from World Cup kickoff. And I want to say, unless things get really dicey with World Cup qualifying, like we don't beat Panama, that's what worries me the most right now, is that we could qualify and just be a bad team at the World Cup.
I mean, absolutely. And so I say we're going to qualify, and I mean that like probably mostly out of optimism, but I just don't think that shouldn't be the narrative right now. Like, don't worry, we're going to qualify. Don't be nervous. Like, yeah, it's great if we qualify, but if we get like slaughtered every single game because we are so like dysfunctional, that is a concern for me. And like somebody tweeted us in the lead up to this.
We are right now one DeAndre Yedlin injury away from having Eden Hazard run at Graham Zusi in a group game.
I'm frightened. That was me staring off into space, pondering that situation. Yeah, and we had somebody tweet. I really got to start remembering the tweets I'm going to randomly reference in the show, so I apologize. But it was like happy 4.5-year anniversary of when Brian Strauss got the like expose in the U.S. locker room.
That was March away to Honduras.
Yeah, that was like so many like problems that like people didn't realize that were brought to the surface. Like I'm not going to be surprised if we hear that because it just seemed so disjointed in a way that
different to all the stories we've heard about this Bruce Arena team.
Right, that like chemistry's great and everybody's figured it out and everybody knows their roles, and even if it's a minor role, everybody's ready to play that minor role. And maybe it was just that those roles weren't put together in a like maybe it's like when I bake, I always forget like one or two key ingredients, or like oh shoot, I was supposed to like soften that didn't work out very well.
That's why we do Blue Apron. Who will be a sponsor later this week.
That certainly helps. But it just so I think that was just very surprising to me that was the narrative heading into this, and that the United States looked so all over the place in these two games. It makes me wonder if that's actually the case, if there are sort of problems behind the scenes that people don't know what's expected of them or how to play together, and so they're trying to figure it out as best they can. So
I want to say the biggest problem I've seen, and the biggest problem I currently have with the Bruce Arena regime, is the lack of a pressing game. And so actually no, there are two things. There's the willingness to keep picking what I would call Bruce's favourites, even when the evidence of their performance is such that maybe they should not be selected for big games. And Graham Zusi, Omar Gonzalez, I think it's not a coincidence that's where the goal came tonight. They've been the target of a lot of worry from US fans and from this podcast for a couple of months now, right? And with good reason, I think. So I'm worried about him keep picking those favourites that aren't performing. But I'm also worried about the lack of a pressing game and the way that we would press at the... Did we talk about this in the show already? I'm sorry, it's been a while. We would press at the front, but then sit deep at the back. And there's no coordinated effort to make that happen. And I'm kind of thinking now, when people think about who should be the coach after the 2018 World Cup, like who would you want instead? My first thought now isn't like just someone who will pick young players or whatever. It's a coach with a pressing like regimen, so that the US can be one of those teams that goes out and presses the opposition. Because we've never done it, and I would love to see it.
And I think it's also a coach who knows how to get the best out of like the sum of the parts. You know, like how to get that complete performance out of...
But that's what a pressing team can do. Think of Giorgio Wijnaldum at Liverpool under Jurgen Klopp. You wouldn't think of him as a world beater. Now he's part of this sort of awesome central midfield. He never expected that.
I know, and I think it's like you coach players into a system and then they get comfortable in it because you keep doing that same thing. If you're changing it up and trying this guy here, like it feels like a little bit more like experimentation, but it also feels like experimentation like rotating around a 4-4-2 or a 4-2-3-1, which is sort of outdated to some extent. And so you get into those situations where you've got an overwhelmed midfield, but you kind of haven't dealt with other ways to deal with that. And so suddenly, we're just going to be overwhelmed and kick it long. We'll see what happens.
Bielsa?
No. I do not want that either. But I guess my final thing, and this is... Actually, I've got a couple things. But one of my final things is I get a little bit frustrated because I feel like so often the narrative is that there's no pressure on the U.S. national team, that other countries, if they're struggling to qualify, the media are all on the coach, they're all on the players, they're demanding results. And I feel like we kind of are doing that. And the response seems to be a little bit of like a hand wave. Like, oh, you guys, not just you guys, but like media in general, American fans. It's like,
you talking about Bruce Arena's quotes in the press conference.
And just kind of that overall approach of like, oh, you guys are being ridiculous. You guys are being crazy. Like, oh, yeah, it's the coach's fault. Like, as though the coach, like, it just feels very, like, you can't say we need pressure to thrive and like we want people to really care about this team, but stop caring so much. Like, don't get on us right now. Like, we don't really need the hassle, man. It's just sort of, you can't do both. And I find myself a little bit frustrated by that kind of attempt to exist in two realities.
And the other thing I would like to see from Arena is maybe some mea culpa and explanation of some of the tactical stuff that has happened in the Costa Rica game and the Honduras game.
Sure.
Right? Because he knows, even though I know he's not deeply into this stuff, He understands this stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. And so that's my part one final point. My part two, the biggest thing that I took away from this game that I did not take away or mention in the hot take, what were the officials doing in this game? Because we went back and watched. There is an absurd amount of like stoppage, like I need to be stretched out from a cramp. The goalkeeper goes down for literally 3 minutes. There were 3 minutes added on at the end of this game. There were 6 substitutions in the second half. There were multiple stoppages. So that's ridiculous. There should have been at least 5 or 6. And then my favorite one, which is totally ludicrous, was at one point Michael Bradley accidentally steps on the referee's toe. You alluded to this earlier. Yeah. He blows the whistle and stops play as like, my foot hurts now. Play must stop. Like, and then gives a dead ball situation where like Honduras, I think, have to play the ball all the way back to Brad Guzan. That's not what happens. Like, we've seen like refs get hit by the ball or get like stumble and trip, and he actually got clipped like twice, I think, in this game. It was a very strange overall officiating performance. And then there was the one, not to mention, when Kellen Acosta's corner went out of bounds, but then Honduras countered, and the other official was like trying to wave his flag while also monitor play. It looked
like he got like a weird offside call very, very wrong. He's actually trying to call attention to the corner kick way down the other side of the field and the other side of the field.
And that was another instance where then the center official figured out what happened, called the play back, took it all the way back for a goal kick to Honduras, but like stopped to explain to every single outfield player along the way, like, so this is what happened. As Michael Bradley's in the background, like, let's go. Like, we got places to be, man. Like, we don't have time for this. So that was another minute of maybe time that should have been added on at the end.
Oh, okay, so we're not going to try and fix this US national team on today's show, because there'll be time in the future to think about like what are the lineup we would like to see, Pulisic in the middle, Areola on the right, all that kind of stuff. If you're feeling down about the US, I would say maybe listen to Wednesday's Top Draw Soccer Show. It's going to be myself and Travis Clark. We're going to be talking about the next generation of US men's national team players, like who are the next up in line for sort of each position on this team. Top Draw Soccer, all one word, Top Draw Soccer Show. Find it on your podcast player.
And here is my like silver lining sort of positive note to end on, is that if the United States do end up qualifying, which I think they will, you would rather them have this sort of identity crisis now than, say,
late May,
when they're playing, just before the World Cup, when they're doing like those friendlies, or during the World Cup. You do not want to see them really struggle to figure out who they are and who fits where. And I'm hoping, that's my biggest takeaway, is that I'm hoping we see sort of some growth from this, that like maybe Graham Zusi doesn't start at right back anymore. That's probably not going to work so well. Maybe Omar Gonzalez drops to like 5th in the depth chart.
Yeah, there does need to be a rethink on those things, but maybe we'll talk about that sort of as we get through September and we start waiting for early October. Big games for the US, kind of exciting but nervous stuff for us, because the Total Soccer Show business plan includes the US at the World Cup in 2018.
Yeah, it's not going to be great. Not going to be great. I think we're not the only ones who are sort of nervously like, we had ideas for this? Can we make sure they get there?
Well, also, think about the pressure. I've got this weird idea. I don't know if you've got a second to talk about this, but if the US doesn't make the World Cup, the like soccer media and soccer fandom will be really angry for a good few months. A lot of people, sort of Joe Public type person, won't notice until the World Cup draw happens for 2018, and they're like check in on like, oh, where's the US?
That's
Where's
going
the
to be weird.
US? Maybe they're all away in Group H. No, where's the US? And then there are going to be people who, when the tournament starts in June, the real, like, not even interested fans, but the people who just, like, support the US at the World Cup, like I check in on, speed skating at the Olympics. You suddenly find out the day of the tournament and you're like, oh, no. So we'll hear about this, like, in 2 waves of interest. 3, fans sort of semi-interested and then not at all interested but watches the World Cup.
Yes, and you've just made me realize that if the United States doesn't qualify on the off chance, first of all, that's pretty much Bruce Arena's like reputation destroyed.
Yeah, on fire.
That would be, they've qualified for what, every World Cup in the past 7 World Cups since 1990.
1990,
yeah, so that would be a huge deal. And I also want to say, let's keep Chris Wondolowski out of the firing line, because nothing against him. I just shudder to think of a situation in which, like, the United States is chasing the game against Panama, like it's 0-0. He gets a sitter and misses it, and then the United States fails to qualify. Like that, I don't know what would happen.
What if he scores the goal that qualifies us, and then all is forgiven?
I think that'd be fine.
Yeah.
I'd be okay with that. I fear things. I'm now very nervous, and I was not nervous. I was angry before, and now I'm nervous. So I guess that's good.
We'll talk again in the near future.
I think you make smarter decisions when you're nervous, right? Except to go full circle, I'm pretty sure we've already acknowledged that when you're nervous, the serial killer murders you.
Yeah,
so that's not
you
good.
trip over
that's not
and
good.
then he gets you.
Uh-oh. Let's get happy then. Should we talk about scouting?
Yes, let's move on to the Total Soccer Show Scouting Network. This is where we have listeners keep track of exciting young players around the globe. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 reports to read today.
We sure do. Would you like to start, or would you like me to go first?
You seem like you want me to start.
Sure, you go first.
Okay, then. First up, a report from Beth Jolly and Alex Barone. They are scouting Kylian Mbappe, the 18-year-old French forward for PSG.
On loan from Monaco, I guess we should add.
Yeah, but basically for PSG, right?
Yeah.
Beth and Alex say it's been an interesting week for Mbappe. No kidding. On Thursday, PSG signed Mbappe on a season-long loan from Monaco with an option to buy for 180 million euros. I believe it's kind of mandatory to buy unless PSG get relegated, right?
Correct.
That same day, he subbed on in the 76th minute for France, scoring his first senior international goal. Didn't know that. In their 4-0 win. On Friday, UEFA opened a formal investigation into PSG's compliance with financial fair play. On Sunday, he started and played 59 minutes in France's shocking 0-0 draw versus Luxembourg. That is a roller coaster of a week, Kylian.
Indeed, it is. Up next, Ian Shanks scouting Fernando Arce Jr., the 20-year-old American midfielder for Dorados de Sinaloa. Arce came on as a halftime substitution for Dorados in their most recent game against Juarez. The 45-minute appearance is his longest of the season so far, and Dorados are currently in first place in the Mexican second division.
All right. Russell Varner is scouting Hugo Ariano.
Hugo
Ariano. I apologize. I feel like we've done this every time.
It's because I always mispronounce it, so now Russell spells it out phonetically, and then I remove it from the scouting report every time, and then we continue to mispronounce it. Yep.
So Hugo Ariano is a 19-year-old American defender for Los Angeles Galaxy 2. Ariano was named to the bench for the Galaxy senior team's 3-0 win. Unfortunately, Hugo didn't see any playing time, but he did a great job of keeping his seat on the bench. So there's that, question mark?
Ideal.
Russell's getting bitter.
I mean, I think I read that as sarcasm. I think he might have meant that seriously. Like, hey, he's still on the bench. That means he's still in contention. Michael Russell, scouting Christian Bielik, 19-year-old Polish center back for Arsenal.
Isn't he a defensive midfielder?
I saw him listed as a center back. That's what Michael said. I'm going with center back.
Okay.
Christian Bielik has been ruled out of action until December following surgery to correct a shoulder problem he suffered in Arsenal's U23 match against Manchester City. I'll add that when he was discussing the injury on social media after the fact, it was a post reminiscent of what a 19-year-old would say about an injury. I think it ended with him being like, whatever doesn't kill you makes you stronger, in all caps. So kind of intense, but ready to return.
Speaking of, Jeff Amelin is scouting Patrick Bamford, the 24-year-old English striker for Middlesbrough. Jeff says, happy birthday to Patrick. He just turned 24, and while he has not scored in his return to Middlesbrough, it seems this move has much more promise than the disastrous loan moves to Crystal Palace, Norwich, and Burnley. He's only started 3 of Borough's 5 matches, but the 2 he missed were by far the team's worst offensive performances. He got 1 assist already and looks to be in a good position in terms of the striker pecking order. Quick backstory on Bamford. So he was at Chelsea? Went on loan to Middlesbrough, lit it up, scored a ton of goals, back to Chelsea, then those loans to Palace, Norwich, Burnley all went badly.
Yeah.
So this is kind of a resurrection job back at Middlesbrough.
theoretically,
Yeah.
although he still hasn't scored, but at least he's like playing in a way that is reminiscent of productive soccer, so that's good. Andrew Baird scouting Josh Perez, 19-year-old American winger, on loan at AS Livorno from Fiorentina.
I'm excited about this move.
After officially joining Livorno on Thursday of last week, Perez made his debut for the club on Sunday, coming on as an 81st-minute substitute in their 1-1 draw with AC Prato. There wasn't much...
I'm always interested in these teams that are still playing through the international break.
Yeah, well, Series C will do that, I
Yeah.
guess. There wasn't much analysis to offer in regards to Perez's performance specifically, but bottom line is that it's good to see him getting first team minutes immediately after arriving, essentially. Hopefully he'll be able to crack the starting 11 for Sunday's match against Lucchese. I think that's Lucchese, why not? Random note.
Allora.
Thank you.
I've been watching
Master of None.
yeah.
Yep. It took me a really long time to get the title of that show. Because it's like
Jack of all
trades, master
Yeah.
of none. Didn't put that one together.
Oh,
I just
I
thought
got
he
it.
was like not very good at stuff. I'm going to say Lucchese because I believe that's also a crime family.
Okay.
Random note: Perez. If Lucchese, the club, are from Sicily, questions must be asked. Random note: Perez was Livorno's fourth substitution on Sunday, which I thought was a little strange. Andrew looked into it and found out that Series C actually allows for 5 substitutions in regular time. It might be Series C. I could be wrong on that one too.
That feels right.
Yeah.
So USL used to do 5 subs.
They did,
So I guess
and it
you can get an exception.
was confusing.
It was tough to do the commentary,
Yep.
right? Because suddenly almost half the team has changed on both sides.
I think it took me like into the third game maybe to pick up on that. So I
Yeah.
kept being like, final substitution, and you were
I'll
like,
be like,
except
nudging
2
you.
remaining. I think you did a very good job of correcting me.
Oh, quick note on lower division soccer in the US. Did you see the news today that NASL apparently have been told your D2 sanctioning is not in effect for 2018?
Yeah. Not sure what to make of that one.
No. Well, I'm hopefully going to be talking to Wes Burdine later this week. That's who sort of broke the story, I think with some help from Nippon Chopra. So I will talk to him on Friday with get more information about that story.
Alrighty. Sounds good to me. We're also going to be back to review all of the international break. We're going to do a little bit of thumbs up, thumbs down for the international window.
Yeah, we'll take a look around everything and maybe middle fingers up for Dele Alli.
Is this an inside joke, Daryl? Everyone knows that. Calm it down.
We don't believe him, do we?
I don't know. Whatever. Who cares? It's middle finger.
He was brilliant in that game.
There are worse things.
More on that on Thursday's show. 2 quick notes. If you'd like to join the TSS Scouting Network, it is totalsoccershow.com/join. I sent out a lot of scouting assignments today.
I don't feel good about this situation. I've just realized that
What?
we now live in a world where England, their major drama is a player did something sort of inappropriate. It feels like a manufactured story because England are kind of making it through qualification.
Yep. They
Whereas the
consider
United States are really struggling to qualify.
Yep.
I don't like this switch narrative. It's not good. It's not good at all.
So yeah, if you'd like to get in on the drama, it's totalsoccershow.com/join. This is one of the ways we support the Total Soccer Show. If you'd like to buy a TSS t-shirt, the campaign ends midnight September 6th. You're probably hearing this on September 6th. You have until midnight Eastern to get a t-shirt at totalsoccershow.com/merch. The link will be in the show notes, Taylor. After that closes, there is no way to buy those t-shirts. So get on it.
Nice emphasis on those T-shirts.
Yeah. Because there may be more t-shirts in the future.
Yeah, more campaigns to come, but for these...
But they'll be different. They'll be
limited
different
time.
designs, yeah. So if
Indeed.
you want those tees, get them. totalsoccershow.com/merch.
Yep, and if you're wondering what my emotional range has been in this show, it's gone from angry to nervous to now I'm just afraid.
Well, Taylor, however you feel, thank you for taking the time to talk to me today.
Well, now I feel politely respected. So right back at you, buddy.
Listeners, thank you for listening. We always appreciate it when you listen to the Total Soccer Show. We know other podcasts are available. We're going to be taking Wednesday day off, but Top Draw Soccer, as I mentioned earlier, will be out sort of late Wednesday afternoon. We'll talk about the future of the US national team. You want to hear all about Andrew Carlton, that's probably the show for you. And then we'll be back on Thursday with our Thumbs Up, Thumbs Down international action review. Until then, we'll talk to you soon.